We're back with another EV Comparo, and this time around it's the BMW i5 eDrive40 versus the Mercedes-Benz EQE 350 Plus. Both cars cost 420,000 ringgit. Well, 419,888 for the Mercedes-Benz and 419,800 for the i5. If you want to be particular about that, 88 ringgit cheaper for the i5.
Well, 88 ringgit is pretty much negligible when you're buying a car like this. And it's not just the price. These two are actually pretty similar cars too. They are both single motor, they're both from Germany, and they are both cars that your boss might consider.
You're not exactly saving money with them too. Both the EQE and the i5 are more expensive than their petrol counterparts.
But of course, EVs are the hot new things. So if you're undecided between these two, or if you want to impress your boss with your elite car advice, well, here's a video for you. This video is powered by Gentari. Boost your range confidence with over 330 charging points nationwide.
Since they're both electric cars, let's first address the EV numbers. So if you want more range, it's straight up facts, go for the EQE. You get a 90.56 kWh battery pack, 669 kilometers of range.
The i5 only has 582 kilometers of range because of its smaller 81.2 kWh battery pack. But I can charge this car at a much higher pace at up to 205 kilowatts at a compatible DC fast charger like this one here at Gentari compared to the 170 on the EQE.
Yeah, okay, but the spec sheet suggests that the EQE charges faster, taking 32 minutes to go from 10% to 80%, while the i5 takes 34 minutes to do the same with a smaller battery pack. Isn't that right?
Yeah, I mean, it's just 2 minutes, but this car is actually slower, which I think is probably caused by the charging curve. But if we are talking about AC charging, these two cars are essentially identical. They both take 11 kilowatts, and because of my smaller battery, mine here takes just a little bit shorter time to complete charging. But let's be honest, they are both at around 9 hours.
That's a shame though, because elsewhere in the world, both of these cars can be spec'd with 22 kilowatts AC charging, so it will take half the time to do the same. As for energy consumption, both the i5 eDrive40 and the EQE 350 Plus at their best use 15.9 kilowatt hours of energy for every 100 kilometers driven.
Introducing Gentari Go, your one-stop sustainable lifestyle platform designed for seamless EV charging, home solar solutions, and exclusive rewards, all at your fingertips. With the convenience of accessing over 2,000 EV chargers spanning across Malaysia, Singapore, and Thailand, embrace a clean energy future today with Gentari Go. Just by looking at it, you know that the BMW is the sportier car between the two. It's got a more traditional 3-box sedan design compared to whatever that thing over there is. And the wider stance, the rising belt lines along the sides all help the i5 look fast, even though it's just parked here stationary.
Well, some sacrifices had to be made for better aero. EQE has a drag coefficient of 0.22, i5 has a drag coefficient of 0.23, 0.01 of a difference. Sure, not much, but at least this one is trying something new. We're all heading into the EV era anyway. We don't even need an engine anymore, so why the long hood?
It's called style, bro, something that's been refined and polished over multiple generations, and this thing has all of the classic BMW touches that you'd expect, including the Hofmeister kink over on the C-pillars. The headlights are super sleek, which looks to be inspired by the E60 5 Series, which in my books is the best 5 Series ever. And look, even the grille is in a normal shape.
Nah, you're biased. And who says you have to be old school to be cool anyway? This one has the fancier matrix digital lights, that 3D helix taillight design. You know what else I have? Pop-out door handles. Do you have that?
Nah, but I've got LED lights around my grille, and look at my wheels. Those are 21 inches, and you can't deny that those look super cool.
No doubt they look cool, but I imagine it's pretty stressful to drive with those 21-inch wheels and low-profile tires. This one sits on 19-inch wheels. I'm pretty sure that's even more stressful than meeting your future in-laws for the first time.
Dude, you got pimple on your face, ah? And what's that thing over on your fenders? What, fuel cap?
Hey, be nice with that camera at the front, okay? Oh, and that flap on the fender, well, that's actually the flap for the washer fluid, and that's because Mercedes-Benz doesn't actually want you to open the trunk. It's actually a bit difficult, and when you open it, there's no hood strut at all. Feels like wasted space really, because it's quite empty.
Mine opens just like any other car thanks to the two gas struts, and there's a giant cover in the middle which when you open it, I'm just kidding. I've got no frunk also, which I don't understand. There must be a better way to utilize the big space in what used to be the engine bay over here.
If you're wondering about the size, the i5 is longer, but the EQE has a longer wheelbase. Height and width are about the same for both cars. Now let's get on to the interior.
Inside here, the i5 really just feels like any other BMW. You've got the driver-focused cockpit with everything tilted towards you for easier access, and you also sit quite low into the ground for the classic BMW sporty driving experience.
The EQE's cabin is more like a lounge. You get fancy ambient lights, but no hyperscreen since this is the base spec EQE, but instead you get this panel with the mini Mercedes-Benz stars and a two-screen setup, something similar that you find in the W206 C-Class.
Between the two dashboards, I think the BMW one here just exudes a lot more character, and even though it might not look as luxurious as the EQEs, I think in terms of feel and comfort, they two are pretty much neck and neck, and it really is a lot more premium than before. The unique interaction bar with its crystal-like ambient lighting system really does help with that, I think.
Now, design philosophies aside, we're here to compare both these cars against each other. They cost the same, so let's pinpoint exactly what they have to offer. Starting with these screens, I get a 12.3-inch digital instrument cluster and a 12.8-inch head unit.
I've got 12.3-inch here and 14.9 on my infotainment display.
Burmester surround sound system in the EQE.
Bowers & Wilkins on my i5.
Augmented reality navigation.
Same here.
4-zone climate control and electric steering adjustment.
Same again.
Wireless charging pad, wireless Android Auto, wireless CarPlay.
Yup, and yup.
Powered front seats with lumbar support adjustment.
Same here, and I've got seat ventilation on mine.
Yeah, only seat heating in the EQE, but at least I get pedal shifters for the regen braking.
Yeah, well, I do have to adjust that on the screen, but I've got a boost pedal, which we'll talk about later.
Aha, frameless windows.
Okay, I've got a glass roof, and even though I cannot open it, it does at least let in a lot of light into the cabin to make it feel a lot more airier.
Yeah, unfortunately I have no sunroof or glass roof at all in the EQE, but fluffy features aside, let's talk about something more practical. Cubby spaces. This is a dedicated EV, and thanks to that I have a two-stage center console. You can put really bulky items. I also get a very big armrest storage box.
Yeah, okay, my armrest storage box really is embarrassingly small, and even though I've got no transmission or any drivetrain components down here, just look at the size of this center console. It's huge. But while I do lose out on storage space, what I do gain is physical controls on the center console. Now, to be clear, the eDrive40 system is a lot easier to use than before, but having this giant knob really makes this thing a lot easier to operate while driving. And even better when it's made out of crystal.
Yeah, I don't get a control unit for the head unit, physical one on the center console. The MBUX is pretty much touchscreen based. The other option to control it is the capacitive control on the steering wheel, and admittedly it's not the most intuitive one out there. You still end up looking at the screen most of the time. While we're complaining general fit and finish can be a little bit better in the EQE, the dashboard just sounds hollow when you knock on it here, and the mini stars don't light up evenly across the dashboard.
It's not all good news on the i5 too. While the front seats are super comfortable, BMW for some reason has decided to remove the adjustable side bolsters. For a company that prides itself on making cars for the drivers, that just seems like a silly thing to remove.
A plus point for the EQE would be its space in the second row seats, especially in terms of legroom. It has a longer wheelbase despite its shorter overall length. Besides that, you get more room for your feet as well, since the floor is flatter in the EQE as an EV should be. I mean, what's that hump doing there in the i5? Is there a prop shaft? Is there an exhaust system?
That's fair, but what actually annoys me more is the fact that these seats in front are so low that I cannot slot my feet underneath it to stretch out my legs. And why on earth have they removed this seat back pouch over here? I mean, it just makes no sense at all. But yeah, otherwise, they both share pretty much the same equipment back here. There's the aircon blowers on the center console and on the B pillars, but where the i5 wins is in terms of USB ports, because not only do I have two USB-C ports here on the center console, I also have two more, one each on the seat backs. And that's one more thing that the i5 wins, and Hey Arif, you wanna tell them about it?
Yeah. In the storage department, the i5 wins. It gets a 490 litre boot space, while the EQE only gets 430 litres. The i5 has a lower load lip as well, so loading your items in and out is also easier. In the EQE 350 Plus, you get 292 horsepower and 565 Newton meters of torque. For some context, that's a bit more power than what you usually get in a 2-litre turbocharged engine from Mercedes-Benz, say like the one you find in the E300. So a bit more power, but a lot more torque. Plenty of power for a single motor setup. Of course, you can't compare it with a dual motor setup. 0 to 100 in 6.4 seconds. Top speed is 210 kilometers an hour. Driving modes, you have 3 of them in here. There's Eco, there's Comfort, and there's Sport. There's also Individual, where you can mix and match these settings.
On my end, the i5 eDrive40 makes 340 horsepower and 430 Newton meters of torque. But to get the full 430, you have to either put it into sports mode or engage something called the sports boost mode, which you can do by pulling this little pedal on the steering wheel, which will give you the max power for 10 seconds at a time. Now in this mode, the i5 will complete the century sprint nearly half a second quicker than the EQE at 6 seconds flat. Now 6 seconds may not sound all that impressive by today's standards, but what you have to remember is the way EVs accelerate is completely different to your regular petrol-powered 5 Series. So for someone who hasn't experienced an EV before, well, this could really be the fastest car they've ever driven. And believe me when I say this, no matter if it's the i5 or even the EQE, it is definitely fast enough, because the moment you put your foot down onto the floor, you are immediately sent to the back of your seats, and the exhilarating feeling that you get with all the blood rushing to your brains.
Of course, most people who buy these cars aren't exactly looking for straight line performance. Well, not as their first priority anyway.
What about comfort in the EQE? Well, the thing about EVs that I've driven at least is that some of them are a bit too soft and some are a bit too hard. This one leans a bit towards the softer side of things. Is it comfortable? Yes, it is. Could it be more comfortable? Yes, it could be, because this one doesn't get the Airmatic air suspension system. It's not even an optional item. So if you want the air suspension, you'd have to go for the EQE 53, the AMG. But that's alright, because I believe even the i5 eDrive40, as standard in Malaysia, doesn't get air suspension, not even on one of the axles.
Well, actually, the i5 here does get air suspensions on the rear axle. And what that means is that this car actually rides even softer than the EQE in your normal driving modes. But the magic of the i5 is not that it's just soft. It's soft but controlled. So when you're driving over the humps or road undulations, the suspension will just soak all of these imperfections up super effortlessly, and it almost feels like it's just gliding over them. Now, I once said that the i7 feels almost like the Rolls-Royce Magic Carpet ride, and I have to say that the i5 definitely took a few pointers from that, which honestly isn't all that surprising, because the rear axle on this car is actually inherited from the i7. And when you pair all of that to the whisper quiet cabin, these super comfortable seats, the smooth advanced driver assistance features, and the Bowers & Wilkins sound system, well, the i5 is just a brilliant and super comfortable place to be in, especially on the long highway journeys, which I think this car might spend a lot of time doing.
That's not something that's unique to the i5, because the EQE is also just as quiet and just as comfortable on the highways. The noisiest thing in here is perhaps the air conditioning system, with the blower being a little bit too loud, even at moderate fan speeds. You can also sometimes hear the compressor working, so that gets a bit annoying. That aside, I would say road noise is acceptable, wind noise is minimal, and since this is an EV, there's little to no vibrations as well. There's a lot of work that the suspension has to do in the EQE 350 Plus. So this thing weighs 2.3 tons, but I guess it's doing a pretty good job. Like I said, it's comfortable, a bit soft, definitely not something for you to chuck around. You can feel the weight of this car, especially in the corners, and the reason I'm pointing it out is because some cars are able to hide this a bit better, say the e-tron GT or the Taycan, which weigh about the same as this thing.
You know what other car hides its weight well? Now the i5 has got a special trick up its sleeve, and that is when you put it into sports mode. And it can be a bit of a faff to do it because you have to actually touch on the screen or use the iDrive controller to do it. But when you reach the curvy back roads, well, it is all worth the effort. But what really puts the i5 above and beyond the competition is its body control. Now the 5 Series has made a name for itself being the perfect blend between comfort and driving dynamics, and I have to say that the i5 here really does continue that legacy, because this thing here weighs over 2.2 tons, but when you're just driving it, you really don't feel it at all. Well, except when you have to put on the brakes, but aside from that, it really does feel like how a BMW should feel. It even still has the natural flowy character when you're attacking the corners, just like any other BMWs out there. The i5 might look huge from the outside, but it certainly drives nothing like that. And if all of this is still not enough excitement for you, just put your foot down and listen to that.
It's called the iconic Sounds Electric, and it's actually designed by a certain Hans Zimmer, who you might have heard from movies like Inception and the Batman trilogy. There's a different sound for each of the driving modes, but the standout one is the expressive mode, which makes you feel like you're conducting your own orchestra just by using your right foot.
The EQE 350 Plus, on the other hand, has 3 sound profiles, each with their own unique names like Vivid Flux, Silver Waves and Roaring Pulse, whatever they mean. But if I'm being completely honest, I prefer to drive the car with these sounds turned off. At least, my paddles behind the steering wheel are used for regen braking, which is something actually useful instead of that silly boost mode on the BMW. Might seem like a simple thing, but this makes your life a lot easier when you're driving in places with a lot of elevation changes. So this is a very intuitive thing. You have 3 stages. You have normal, the strong, intelligent. It just feels like you're driving a normal car, you know, something that we're all very familiar with. The car adapts to you instead of the other way around.
The i5 doesn't have the pedals, but what it does have is something called the adaptive regen mode, which uses the front camera and sensors to automatically detect the traffic conditions ahead of you and adjust the braking strength accordingly. So say you are coming up to a traffic stop, the car will then automatically slow itself down a little bit more using regen braking. But here in Malaysia, with the, let's call it the less courteous drivers, the car can actually get quite frantic trying to cope with the other drivers just cutting in ahead of you. So sometimes it can actually get a little bit jerky. For most of the time I've been driving this car, I've just left it in low for a smoother and more predictable driving experience.
So which one of these two should you pick? Well, if you want more range, the EQE is a clear winner here. A lot less range anxiety. With this one, it's also a dedicated EV, if that's something that matters to you.
But if you want a more traditional sporty style and a more engaging driving experience, well then get the i5. And it's practically a newer car too, with this car launched globally 2 years after the EQE.
If you enjoyed this video, give it a like, share and subscribe to our channel. Also remember to turn on notifications.
But if you didn't, maybe leave a comment down below to tell us where we can improve. But that's it for now. Thank you for watching and we'll see you in the next one.
Download Gentari Go and enjoy a 10% discount on your next 10 charging transactions right from the convenience of the Gentari Go app, valid at all Gentari charging points across Malaysia. Limited time offer only.